The Razor Crest was in rough shape. The old girl had surely seen better days. She's tougher than a gundark and limped her way to port. Stale, salty air filled his helm. Mando had made it to where his kin were said to be, but once again found himself at the business end of a blaster and in the deep end of trouble. The siren song of the sea gave way to a chorus of jetpacks. Maybe Mando's luck was starting to turn around.
Spoilers ahead. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Hoth Topics, a podcast about Star Wars. I'm your host, Ian. Joining me, as usual, is your other host, John. John, how you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Good to hear it. And Mike is joining us again. Roommate Mike is joining us again for our
That's not his name.
continuation.
You know that's not his name.
Straight Facts with Roommate Mike is back again
Hey, that's me.
to continue down our Mandalorian journey. John, I'm going to need you to try not to break my brain today. It is incredibly fragile.
Oh. Dang.
As soon as you said, that's not his name, I went, oh, is Mike not recording with us?
No, Mike left.
We snuck in a different guest star right in between when you started talking.
Oh, boy. All right.
So, real quick before we start, I want to send out a special thank you to our buddy Chris, who's been recording the intros for these shows. Very much appreciate him taking the time after 11:30 or something at night to stick around and record those for me or with me. So, thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris. I was talking to him earlier about maybe having him on for a post-Mando Western analysis episode because he's real big into that genre and there's some crossover. So maybe we'll hear from him. Yeah, maybe we'll hear from him down the line. But yeah, thank you very much, Chris, for doing those dumb little intro things for us. Your talent is greatly appreciated. Now then, we are on to episode
3.
Episode 3.
Chapter 11.
Entitled
The Heiress.
I'm Good at Remembering.
You got all those, Ian. 3 for 3. Good job.
Yeah, it was all me.
Yeah, Ian, you don't need to remember anything because we got Straight Facts Mike here with the Straight Facts.
That's true. That is 100% true.
That's like half our job.
So, I'm sure I've got a lot to say about this episode. So let's start with somebody else so that I don't end up talking the entire time. John, what did you think about the heiress here? This episode of Mando?
I thought that it was funny that even in live action, the Quarren people are not to be trusted. And it's one of those weird Star Wars racisms that's like, okay, because it's Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like, even in the Clone Wars, they were like the distrusted species on Mon Cala, or DAC, as we like to call it sometimes.
Yeah.
And I thought they would kind of like move away from that, but like, they're like, you know what? Nah. But to be fair, not all Quarrens, just that one, and his crew, and his brother.
It's still yeah. it's still a bit of a problem considering that I can't think of any examples of a good Quarren, except for maybe a couple of them in one of the unlockable fighter skins in Battlefront 2. That's like the only example I have. So that's not great. And even in like Legends stuff, they were not the best people to be around. Like, let's maybe do a little less racism in the going forward. Yeah. Yeah.
Mike, if you weren't aware, the squid face people, the Quarren, and the fish Mon Calas evolved on the same planet.
Okay.
And their whole history has just been one side trying to wipe out the other until there was like a steady piece.
Got it.
Or like a flimsy piece, yeah.
I really like this episode for a few different reasons. I think the amount of like Mandalorian lore that we got in this episode per minute was really dense. Like the new Mandalorian people that we introduced and what their way is like and what their thought process is compared to the Mandalorian that we're used to. I thought that was really cool to get that kind of background. It almost put our Mandalorian character like in check and thinking like, oh, is this it's almost like thinking like, is the way that he thinks it is like the actual way that everybody else does, or like it almost like put into question what his intentions are in terms of Mandalorian way. What does that look like, and is that actually right? And I thought that was really cool to like spin that people group in a way that I wasn't expecting. So that was really cool. Again, that's coming from somebody that doesn't know a lot about, Mandalorian lore and is just watching it from kind of the sidelines. That's what I'm getting out of it is really dense and really like a lot of background in very few amount of um, scenes that's kind of going over that. So that was really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to hear your perspective on that because I think we had two very different knowledge bases going in, but this episode still answered a lot of questions about Mandalorian lore. Because whereas you came in, like you said, not knowing a lot of Mandalorian lore and seeing this difference, John and myself came in with all this knowledge we've gathered from the Clone Wars about what Mandalorian society was like, at least at that time in the galaxy. And I knew a little bit more from the older games and stuff about the more warlike way of the Mandalore, the way that our Mandalorian is going about. So I went in going, how are they going to marry these two concepts? Because they're very, very different.
Right.
And, kind of being confused in the beginning of the show, just kind of like, hey, how are they going to explain these concepts? Not in a way of like, I demand you explain it, but like
Right.
interested to see where it goes. And I think they did a really good job covering the differences with 3 sentences. Right?
Yeah, it never felt like forced onto you. It was just like either side conversations. It wasn't ever like the main storyline of what we were going on, but the few lines that we got out of it felt really impactful. And I feel like at the end of it, we still came to like we didn't need to explain all of it. So kind of here's where we're at. And it was almost like between the two groups, like almost an agree to disagree compromise is like, I'm never gonna see you eye to eye, but like, we can still work together, we can still commune with one another, but it's what I see out of myself is never going to be what you see out of yourself in terms of like the way with the Mandalorian. So I thought just the amount of what was not said and what was felt was really impactful in this episode.
Well, I know going into the show, just in general, when the armorer asked Din if he's ever removed his helmet, now he's not allowed to remove his helmet and stuff, and how you and I know from our past knowledge that that's not a thing that Mandalorians did. At least for me, I just assumed, oh, this must be a new thing after whatever this purge of Mandalore was, to try to create unity among Mandalorians and foundling Mandalorians. And in this episode to find out that, oh no, that's just his particular denomination of Mandalorian. And they gotta stop using verbs and nouns as adjectives. So I really like that when Bo-Katan and the rest of her crew take off their helmets and he's doesn't understand like at all, because this is the first time he's actually come across Mandalorians that weren't part of his little secret,
his
underground covert. Thank you. I kept wanting to say coven.
I mean, might as well.
It's not a Night Sister. And then just on top of that, just how when he goes, oh, you guys show your faces, like you're clearly not Mandalorian. How they go like, oh, he's one of them. They're already so bummed that this this new Mandalorian that they've come across is crazy cult member.
Just lame in general.
The way they handled Bo-Katan, I think, was really well done, because she presents as this character that, like we were talking about in previous episodes, you don't need to know about everything she's done in order to understand her character. Everything is presented very straightforward. What important exposition needs to be there is handled very well and done not in a let me cram this exposition down your throat for 10 15 minutes out of the runtime, which you're able to kind of get her whole thing of being someone scorned by the Empire who's trying to retake her homeworld without needing to have gone through the Clone Wars and seeing all this, and Rebels as well, and seeing like all the stuff she's been through. Because let me tell you, the Mandalorian arcs in the Clone Wars and Rebels are, oh boy, they go through some stuff.
Yeah, just as somebody that doesn't have that kind of background, I found the Bo-Katan character is like one of the most captivating like characters we've only seen in one episode in the entire series. Like, I absolutely wanted more out of that character in future episodes, if at all possible, because I think every scene that she was in was almost pretty much stolen. Like, it's kind of easy to steal scenes from the Mandalorian because he's faceless. Obviously, Pedro Pascal's like voiceover work is amazing, but primarily we're seeing the supporting characters act as the main character whenever they're in a scene with him. And I think she did one of the best jobs out of anybody in order to kind of capture my desire to want more out of that character and see more in future episodes, hopefully.
Absolutely, and I think they might be setting up a Mandalore. I think I was talking to you about this, John, where maybe not this season, but because of the prominence of, oh my god, I can't remember the Moff's name. Moff Gideon. I wanted to say Gar Saxon because we were talking about Mandalorian stuff and
in Rebels.
Yeah, in Rebels, and then I was like, that's wrong, incomplete. But I since there's such involvement with Moff Gideon and him being sort of responsible for Mandalore, theoretically anyway, being responsible for Mandalore's downfall at the hands of the Empire, I think not this season, but like a season 3 finale, we'll get like a reclaiming Mandalore type thing. So, but on the topic of the Empire, I actually was kind of curious, John, to get your opinion on the behavior of some of the Imperials that we saw in this episode, because the whole goal of the episode is to take this ship from the Imperial remnant, who have a bunch of weapons that, so many Mandalorian names, that Bo-Katan wants to, that Bo-Katan wants to take to go and free Mandalore. And it turns out she's also looking for Moff Gideon, who has the Darksaber. One of the things that really struck me was how Moff Gideon is almost a Darth Vader wannabe. Like, just the way he handles his like people. So in the main trilogy, like, Darth Vader is really the only Imperial that we see who will kill a commanding officer because something's not going his way. But in this episode, we see that Gideon is able to just tell the commanding officer that, yeah, no, you're compromised, you're going down, kill your crew, kill yourself, and go down with the ship. And he does it. So I want to kind of get your take as our resident Imperialist on how that didn't sound
No, it's
right.
fine.
But you know what I mean. Like, what were your thoughts on sort of what we saw of the Empire in this episode?
So we saw in this episode on the Imperial Gazanti cruiser, besides like the stormtroopers who just do stormtrooper things,
Right.
We saw 4 officers. The commander you were talking about, 2 pilots, and another, I believe he's a lieutenant, I really should know my Imperial rank stuff better.
In your defense, the rank bars
Ooh.
change from movie to movie, so
Yeah, but I think
Pretty well
because it's been
solidified now.
standardized by
Yeah.
this point, like they're doing a pretty good job.
He
So
was
he's probably a lieutenant.
cast as deck officer. So
Deck officer.
yeah.
Deck officer.
And then it depending on if they're Army or Navy, like the rank changes again. I'm looking at stuff. It says he's probably a lieutenant. The pilots look like they're lieutenants. So the first officer that the Mandalorians come across, he stands in the middle of the cargo bay, very like, I almost want to say like a Russian commissar or a Warhammer commissar.
So a commissar?
Yeah, a commissar. No, like no armor, standing in the middle, trying to use their presence to affect the morale of the men, like the emperor protects sort of thing. And then as soon as threats happen, that guy dives behind a console and tells him just to like close the doors, kind of showing that how quickly that resolve can break in these officers, which is very, very Star Wars Imperial. And then we had the two pilots, and the entire time they looked different levels of scared and terrified, and just more along that line as the Mandalorians slowly made their way through the ship, not sure what to do, which I was taking more of like they're young. They probably would have been the equivalent of somebody just out of the academy on their first assignment.
Sure.
But I think what you were going for, Ian, was more on that commander who just had some of the best facial expressions in regards to like what his men were doing.
Absolutely.
When the deck officer is so proudly reporting that they've trapped the pirates, Mandalorians, in the cargo control room, the commander has a brief second of smugness on his face, and then immediately going a look of, "Oh, you're an idiot," as the next shot is the cargo bay doors opening and all the Imperials in the cargo bay flying out into atmosphere. And it just reminded me of a line from Zap Brannigan of Futurama, bringing it back to Futurama, where his men are dying, and he shouts at them, "Stop dying, you cowards!" And that was like the look on his face of like the ineptitude of everybody around me is the reason I'm gonna die today. So, like you said, he calls Gideon to get some sort of reinforcements. Gideon says, "Yeah, you're way past that," and without hesitation, pulls out his sidearm, takes out the two pilots, and just dives the ship into the sea, fully ready to give his life to stop whatever's going on the ship. And I feel like that was why he was a commander, is probably Gideon saw that this man would be loyal to a T.
Right.
Like he'll follow the commands because he understands that, unlike the other officers that are assigned to him, that the most important thing is the mission or like the empire and not saving yourself. Which I sorry, I got distracted. I just found a really nice pen.
Focus.
In my pocket. Like you can see that the pilots are nervous and like they don't want to go down with the ship, and so I think that's why like the commander knew he had to take them out, because he knew that they weren't, I don't want to say as loyal, but they weren't as prepared to go as far as they needed if ordered to.
Sure. It kind of makes me wonder too, like, of what's left over of the Empire, right? You've got two types of people. You've got the extremely fanatical ones who will give their life to the Empire till their dying breath. And then you've got all of the leftover unimportant people who are suddenly getting promoted and upgraded into these positions. Because if you think about it, the Death Star blew up. It took out the Emperor. It took out Darth Vader. It took out the majority of like the admirals in the Imperial fleet. The next best thing is Thrawn, and he got jetted out into hyperspace by whales. Like, so there's not a lot of super high-ranking organized Imperials left. So I wonder how many, like those pilots that you mentioned who are like, just fresh out of the academy. They might have just been fresh out of the academy. They might not even have been out of the academy. They're just like, hey, you want to continue to serve the Empire? Congratulations, Lieutenant. Fly the ship for me.
Well, and I'm sure that just because the war was over, so to speak, there were still Imperial held systems. So there are probably systems where people are still being pumped through various academies and schools and training. Like if we look back at Legends real quick, and the Legacy comics where the Empire and the Republic were kind of coexisting. The New Republic it doesn't have the manpower to, occupy all these systems.
Right.
So I'm sure there's huge swaths of the galaxy that remain under some sort of Imperial control, right?
And that's pretty much how the First Order was able to come about in the future, is because the New Republic didn't have arms out there.
Right.
Now I have a question, Mike. On a scale of 1 to 10, how worried were you that the child was going to eat that frog?
I was pretty determined that was definitely going to happen. And I was glad that it didn't. Yeah, I think really the best part about this episode is we got to see Frog Lady and Frog Man, as they are billed, reunite.
It's Dr. Frogman.
We didn't see Baby Yoda eat any eggs in this episode. In fact, more things tried to eat Baby Yoda than Baby Yoda tried to eat them. So that was justice, really. And so I mean, at the end of the day, our heroes are happily ever after. We're good.
Yeah. I don't know how I felt about a restaurant in which your food
You don't like
served.
tube soup?
I'm still living in the tube soup.
That was a small tube. Like, how did that thing get through? That was really
impressive creatures.
Yeah, it's here on Earth. It's kind of like how if cats can like fit their whiskers in a place, they know they can squeeze all the way through.
Instead of right out of the hose.
Another part of this episode I really enjoyed was we talked about last episode how wrecked the Razor Crest looked, and understandably so, coming into Trask, and the ship literally like crash lands almost. Like it lands perfectly. You think it's going to crash, lands on it, an engine blows off, and it gets dumped into the ocean. And Sweater and waiters wearing Moncal offers to, is paid to fix it. And when we get back to it at the end, it's, oh boy, he's just like, he's used rope and like fishing nets to tie stuff together
everywhere in that thing. It's pretty great. They used the technology that they had. He didn't like say how much he was going to fix it. He was given 1,000 credits, say do what you can, basically, and so he did. He used the tools that he had in order to fix it as well as he could, and it still ran at the end. So we're good.
Well, I believe the dock worker, Moncal, said that he was going to fill her up if she would still hold fuel. That's kind of like the extent of what he was prepared to do.
I think his exact words were, Mando asks if he can fix it, and he goes, no, but I can make it fly.
And he did.
Yeah. But I loved that. That was just fantastic. There's just like ropes like holding together control panels, and it looks like a string puppet like thing in the cockpit. That was great. And also the woman who voiced Iden Versio, the main character in Battlefront 2,
yep,
she was one of the characters in Mando. She did something in Mando.
She puppeteered the nostrils.
Okay.
The dock worker Moncal.
Okay, there you go. It was like, I knew it was some weird thing to have to do with the dock worker Mon Calamari, but every article I click on, it has to start with like 9 paragraphs of irrelevant information. All right, gentlemen, anything to add about this episode?
Sasha Banks was in it.
Yeah,
that's not her name.
Sorry, her Mercedes Vernado. One of
No,
those two?
still wrong. It's a WWE superstar
Oh my god.
and SmackDown Women's Champion, Sasha Banks. Please.
Okay. Okay.
We've
You got there.
watched enough episodes of Acquisitions Incorporated to know that when you introduce a WWE superstar, you must always say WWE superstar and then their title and then their
And
name.
their current, whatever
And it's
title
boss
they
time.
have.
Yeah.
It is. For
But-
those of you who do not know what we're talking about, one of the other female Mandalorian who was not Bo-Katan was played by a WWE wrestler who is actually
Her first
really cool.
acting credit outside of the WWE. Pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think she did a good job. I think that she was very expressive and emotive. Her dialogue lines were a little hit or miss, but other than that, good job.
Well, I guess you could argue she is a professional actor,
Yeah, exactly.
but it's a wrestling actor, so it's usually over the top and hammy.
Also, she rescued the child from the sea monster thing, so that was cool.
It's going back to corns being bad creatures,
Yeah,
knocking babies, and why do they have a sea monster in their hold? Why do they have a sea monster that they're clearly has been in their hold for a while?
so I don't have an answer, but I have a theory. My theory is that sea monster is somehow either like attracts or disturbs fish, making them easier to catch.
But I feel like you wouldn't want to put them in the place that you put your fish that you've caught. Is this going to be one of those like Star Wars hand wavium things?
Yeah.
We just needed a plot monster.
Yeah. We needed plot monster, and therefore it's in plot boat on plot planet with plot squids. Speaking of, I 100%, I wouldn't blink twice if I looked out into some East Coast harbor and saw that exact same ship just floating around somewhere out there. It looks like a fishing boat. Like it looks like what it is.
Oh, you just made me wish that to promote the next season of The Mandalorian, if they do San Diego Comic-Con next year, they'll just like remake one of those and park it next to the Star of India. Because every year there's some media thing that is pirate boat related, so they take over the Star of India sailing ship. I know a few years back it was a Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
What's that game? Black Sails? No, that's a show.
Black Flag.
Black Sails. They also turned it into a pirate ship.
Yeah, there you go.
Actually, the Assassin's Creed logo was stained on the sail of the Star of India for a few years.
Yeah, like just change the sails, guys.
They did. I think it's expensive to do that though, and it's a public museum, so I'm sure they're not getting a ton of money.
Right.
I slept on that boat though. That was fun.
That's a weird thing to say.
It was elementary school like field trip. Like we go on the boat and then we have era specific jobs that we all do. There's kids going up in the masts and like pulling up and bringing down the sail. I don't remember what my job was. Oh, it was like prepping ropes or something. I don't know. It was dumb. Totally misunderstood what I was doing. And then we slept in the hull of the boat.
But there wasn't a giant sea monster in there.
There was not. This is true. Because it was a wooden boat and not a space boat. Like the ones in Disney's Treasure Planet. Which were space boats with solar sails.
Mike, anything you want to add?
No, I do not want to add anything to that conversation. Thank you.
Oh boy! All right. Well,
let's wrap it up. How the episode ended with.
Yeah.
So
God.
The Mandalorian helps.
Important plot jump.
Right. We kind of jumped around. The Mandalorian helps Bo-Katan and her team take over the vessel. In payment, she tells him that he can find a Jedi on the planet Corvus, a Jedi named Ahsoka Tano. So he jumps off the starship and goes gets the baby's child, and they head off to Corvus,
Yes.
which the next episode has nothing to do with.
Well, you see, John, when your ship is held up with nothing but fishing net and rope, you're gonna need to stop for repairs at some point. Actual repairs.
Yeah, repairs are for suckers.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that just about wraps it up. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this episode of Hoth Topics, a podcast about Star Wars. If you want to know more, you can always visit us at our website, hothtopicspodcast.com. Send us an email at hothpod@gmail.com, or you can tweet at us on the Twitters at Hothpod. I've been Ian.
I found a really nice pen.
That's John.
Mike's here as well.
Thank you, everybody. We will see you next time.
Really nice pen. It's one of those Uniball pens. Oh, so